In this video, what I want to do is build an Adobe Reader clone using the Electron framework and PDFTron components to help us achieve that task. By the end of this video, we're going to have something like this running across all of the platforms where we can view PDFs, we can perform various other actions like annotations, completing signature workflows, editing, cropping, deleting, rearranging pages, and other functionality directly inside our desktop app. Alright, to kick things off, let's go ahead and run npx create electron app my PDF viewer. Now this is a boilerplate that comes from Electron that allows us to kind of pre-generate everything using vanilla JavaScript. So let's go ahead and run it. Now in your specific project you can actually use any boilerplate like React, Angular, Vue, whatever you're using. You don't have to use vanilla JavaScript. However, it should be pretty easy to kind of port over the logic from this sample right here into your sample. Okay, so let's go ahead and see what comes out of the box. So after running the command, change the directory to get into the app you've just generated and just run npm run start. And here we have something like this running hello world, welcome to your Electron application. And this panel right here might actually remind you of kind of Google Chrome development tools, and that's because it is. And that's because Electron uses Chrome underneath to kind of run and render things out, and kind of pairing it together with the native kind of desktop environment and components to bring us some other capabilities like access to the file system, ability to read and write files. Okay, awesome. So here what we're doing, we're building a PDF viewer. So maybe let's give it a different title. So my PDF viewer, save it. And as you can see, changes didn't reflect here because Electron doesn't offer hot reloading, or I haven't installed that package. So to do that, we can actually, inside of our terminal, type in rs to restart the app, and boom, yeah, as you can see, my PDF viewer is now displayed on top of the window. Okay, great. So now what I'm going to do is download and install a dependency. Specifically, that's going to be responsible for rendering out PDFs and provide us the annotation capability on top of it. So I'll install at PDFTron/WebViewer. Okay, great. And I'll do a little bit of housekeeping in this folder right here. So first, I'm going to create a new file inside the src directory called render.js. Inside of here as well in the root, I'm going to create a new folder called public. Inside of public directory, I'm going to place PDFTron dependencies that are necessary to be served as a static component. So after we ran npm I add PDFTron WebViewer, let's go ahead and find it under our node modules, go into public and grab two folders, core and UI, copy them and put them inside of public by creating a new folder called lib, and then pasting those two folders, core and UI, inside of it. So it will look like something like this. Inside of our index.js, there's a couple things that I want to do first. So I want to not just spin up a main window, but also give it some preferences. Property here called web preferences, and pass it an object. And I'll say node integration equals to true. And then one more is enable remote module. So inside of index.html, inside of our head tag, I want to go ahead and add a WebViewer script that will be loaded right away. So I'll just say src equals, and that script is located one level up inside of node modules, inside of not Electron Forge, but at PDFTron, and then WebViewer. And then this is the script that we want. And let's close off this script tag. Perfect. And then one more thing that we want to do almost at the bottom of the file, but right before the body tag, we want to add one more script and give it an optional parameter called defer. So defer means that we're going to load it after the DOM or kind of our HTML is rendered out to the screen. And then we're going to give it src render.js, and it's just coming from our directory. And inside of here, let's actually go ahead and add kind of our scaffolding for our current app. So if you remember correctly from the start of the video, we had WebViewer, and then we had two buttons called Open and Save File. So to do that, let's do just this, and I'll call it class container, so we can reference this and style it later inside of CSS. And inside of class container, I'm going to have a sidebar. So we'll give it a class of sidebar. And then inside of sidebar, let's give it 2 buttons, and one is going to be ID open, and another one is going to be, and we're going to call it open file. And let's just copy this button since it's going to be the same. The next one, change the ID to save, and we'll say save file. And then that's all for the sidebar. Later we can add a whole bunch of more functionality, maybe give users some options of what they want to do, or change up UI any way you want. And then one more thing that we got to do here is actually kind of mount the viewer inside of this kind of Electron app. So we need to give it a div with a class of WebViewer and ID of viewer. Okay, so this looks pretty good for the setup of index.html. Let's jump over to the render.js and start adding some code. So just think of render.js as just a regular node kind of component that we're going to be building. So there's few things that we would kind of go ahead and require. So let's just start by getting our references to the DOM elements that we've created. So we'll say const viewer element, and we'll say document get element by ID, and pass in the ID. So we'll say viewer. Okay, and then let's add 2 more buttons. So open file button, document get element by ID again, and this one is going to be open. Let's go ahead and copy this one over, and we'll go call it save file button here. Again, this one is save. Great. Okay, so earlier we installed the WebViewer component that's going to help us render out PDF and provide kind of PDF viewing and annotating. So inside of this file, I can say WebViewer, and as you can see that it auto imports it from a PDFTron WebViewer. And inside of here, we can give it an option object. So let's do that. We're going to give it a path to its kind of dependencies, and this is where I copied it over into public lib. So we'll say one directory up, and then under public /lib. So this is kind of all the dependencies that need to be served as static responses. And as a second option that I need to give to WebViewer is a viewer element DOM reference. So it is up right here. Perfect. So I can say viewer element. Great. And then after that, it returns a promise. So after it resolves, we will get an instance object. And then we can perform and call certain WebViewer APIs that we're going to be doing. So again, I have my theme set to dark. So one of the things that I can do is say instance set theme and pass it an option of dark. Great. And then after that, I can also say instance that disable elements for the things that I don't want to appear. And again, since we're not running it in a browser, they're not going to be downloading. So I can just hide the download button. Okay, great. So this looks good to me. Let's just go ahead and run and see what it looks like right now if we messed up anywhere. So let's do npm start. Okay, we have something like this. Not bad, not bad. So a few things we got to tweak here. The styling is a little bit off, but we do have the WebViewer and we do have the 2 buttons. Just like we said, everything's coming up correctly. That's awesome. So let's go back and add some CSS to make things prettier. So over inside of my index.css, I actually wrote out a whole bunch of CSS for this specific file. So I'm just going to be copying and pasting to make things easier, but you can pause the video and kind of copy it down. So remember I created a class called container. We're going to have it display as flex direction row, and we're going to take 100% width of the screen. And also inside of the body, one more thing we're going to override is to say max width is 100 for some reason, Electron added some weird padding around it. So I'm just going to overriding that property. And then we had a sidebar. I'm going to add one more here. So width is going to be alto. So it's just going to kind of wrap and adjust itself based on the width of all the components and content that we have. And we're going to add similar border with the same color as we do on all the kind of separators of the WebViewer to kind of match the style, look, and feel. And again, just to match the style, look, and feel of the button, I'm also going to copy the logic from the WebViewer or styling from the WebViewer and add it here. And I'm going to add kind of just WebViewer styling. So it takes up 100% vertical height of the screen and width of 100%. So let's restart the app now and see how it looks. It's getting closer. As you can see, there's just a weird white border. Quick fix is available. We can just say margin 0, padding 0 on the body. So we can just kind of insert it here, remove the alto, and restart the app now. Yep, and this looks exactly the way I had it at the beginning of my video. Okay, great. So as you can see, if we click open file or save file, those buttons right now do not do anything. That's okay. Let's actually hook the logic up to the buttons to have them function. Okay, so inside of the promise returned by the WebViewer, let's go ahead and kind of add some handlers for the open file button and save file button. So here, let's just call open file button, and inside of here, let's add onClick listener, and there's no capital C, and it's going to be an async function that we pass to it. And inside of this function, what I want to do is say const file, and then await dialog, show open dialog, and give it some properties. So now, what's this dialog thing? This dialog thing is coming from Electron library, and it opens a native dialog to kind of provide us interaction with the file system. So inside of here, we can pass it a couple properties. So one of the properties actually called properties, and it takes in an array. So we're going to say, open file, and we're going to give it some filters if we want to kind of filter out file formats that WebViewer can handle. And again, it takes an array. Name of it is going to be documents. And then extensions that it accepts, well, let's just kind of give it all the extensions that WebViewer accepts. So extensions that WebViewer can accept is PF, and maybe let's give it another one, and we're just going to copy this one in similar fashion and insert it, and we say images, because WebViewer also supports images. WebViewer also supports videos and other file formats, but it requires a little bit of configuration. I just want to keep this video somewhat short and just add PNG and JPEG here. After that, it returns us this file. So kind of like the promise gets resolved, we get this file, and inside of this file object, there's a couple other options available. I know that there's a property called canceled, so we can listen if kind of our user cancels out the native dialog, and say if file is not canceled, then what we want to do is instance.load document. So we're going to be passing the file path to the WebViewer. So it comes from file.file path. And since we're only allowing one file to be open, it's always going to be the array at position 0. Okay, great. So remember to restart your app to see the changes reflected. Cannot read property, show open dialog of undefined. Open file button on click on render.js. Okay, let's see if I have missed anything. Well, one more thing that I'm seeing is that the dialog property actually comes from our remote library. And this is one of the options we have available. So enable remote module, that all of the Electron kind of native interactions that provided by the framework can be passed down to the renderer. So let's actually add one more thing here. So the dialog would come from the remote. Okay, and as I can see, file, it gets printed out correctly in both of the places. So let's try it now. Okay, awesome. So that's exactly what was the issue here. We didn't have the .remote set, so we couldn't access the kind of the native interactions that Electron library provides. And awesome, it loads up the PDF document from my library, and all of the functionality like annotation, shapes, inserted, you know, it's already just kind of comes pre-built in the WebViewer, so we can save a lot of the time inside of our project and just kind of concentrate on the overall look and feel of the app. Now, the next thing I want to do is actually able to annotate it, maybe insert a signature, so I can add a new signature, just draw it here, and then maybe place it within the document, so kind of signing the document. And at this point, you know, I want to save the file. So let's actually hook up the save file button functionality inside of here. So again, very similar to this one, and I'm actually going to copy paste this to speed things up. Instead, we're going to be operating with the save file button. We're going to add an on click. So now in here, it's going to change a little bit. It's going to be open directory, since we want to kind of get the path to where we're going to be saving the file. So I'm going to say open directory and filters. Since WebViewer kind of, you know, it opens any file as we specified here. So PDF, docx, xlx, ppdx, png, or jpeg. But then at the end of the day, you know, since it uses PDF annotation capabilities, and to kind of save the annotations together with the file, we actually convert it to a PDF. So then the result is going to be a PDF. So we're just going to have it named PDF, extension PDF, and we can remove all the other ones. And just hide this one out. That looks good to me. We can add a couple more things, like maybe a button label, or, you know, a title. So title can be select where you want to save the PDF. But I tested this project with kind of Mac and Windows, and it was working on both. And again, this file object returned by the show open dialog promise will return us a file path of where we can save the file. Again, we should wrap it with file.cancel to ensure that the user hasn't canceled out the dialog. And inside of here, we can add some logic. So we're not going to be loading the document anymore, but instead, we need to get the document with the annotations out of the viewer. So on top of here, I like to kind of deconstruct a couple of the variables that I'm going to be using. So I will need doc_viewer, I will need annotation manager, where it stores kind of all the annotation data, like for example signature or highlights, and then this is all available from the instance object. And after that, I can say doc_viewer. So this logic right here is not coming from Electron, it's coming from PDFTron, and you can go check out documentation. I'll post the link in the description. Get document. Okay. And then, so this is kind of getting a PDF object. And then we'll also want XFDF string. So XFDF is just the format how annotations are saved within the PDF. It's just an XML-based structure, and that's coming from the annotation manager that keeps track of all the annotation data. So we can say export annotations. Okay, so far we have the PDF, we have the XFDF. So now let's merge them together. So we'll call it data, and we'll await doc dot get file data, and inside of here, let's give it a XFDF string for the annotation data. And since I called it the same way as the property, I can just leave it as is. Then after that, let's convert it to an array and give it the data property. Okay, and then after that, since we have the kind of file path where we want to kind of create and write the file, we can actually use kind of built-in node capability to write things to the file system. So it's called fs module. So we can say fs write file, and this is not coming up since we need to require it. So instead of fs, we're just gonna do something like this. Const fs require fs. Great. So our path is gonna be, and again, use the backticks to build a template string to say file.filepath at array0, because again, we're allowing single path, and then we're going to convert it to string. And then after that, slash annotated.pdf. And again, maybe in your app, you can make it a little bit better where it actually asks for the name of the file from the user to save the file, but for now I'm just going to keep it like this to keep things simple. And then here I'm going to give the array to write to disk, and then give it a function that gets called anytime there's an error. Okay, so let's restart the app and see if it's working. So here, let's open up the file, PDFTron about, and insert the signature. So we'll insert it here, add new signature. Maybe I'll use a blue font, sign it, place the signature here. Now we want to save the file. So the native dialog does come up, great. So maybe we will save it to the desktop and then hit save here. And as we can see here, it did save it, and we can open it, and bam, here's my signature. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks so much for watching.